How old are you?
I'm 21.
And how much money do you make a month?
I make $170,000 in profit.
How?
So if you don't have people copying you, then I don't assume you're doing something special. The type of client you attract reflects on everything. The better clients you attract, the better marketing you have to attract better clients. The biggest problems are internally because that's what reflects on your business all the time. So I feel like the biggest thing that I can improve on is, I also disagree with the standpoint of saying like, the more you work doesn't mean the more money you make. I technically think that's not always true. You just need to make sure you do different work and the right work.
Nick, how old are you?
I'm 21.
And how much money do you make a month?
I make $170,000 in profit.
How?
I build and scale info products.
Why do you think what you've done has worked so well compared to everybody else out there?
I look into the details of things.
But for what particular reason? Do you think a lot of guys overlook that and just go straight into almost like trying to get people results by just kind of hoping, or what's been backed, right? Because there has to be so much in your results to have this consistent wave of results every single month, man.
I feel like people see the info space as air, most of it, right? Right?
Yeah.
Could be technically true. But I feel like the moment you back things up with data, it makes it so much stronger. It makes the solution so extremely powerful. And the only thing that we're doing here every day is we're looking at the ICP's, the ideal client's problem, and we'll see if we have a solution for it. And I feel like I'm figured out exactly, and I have all the data on knowing how to figure out what that client's problem is for me to know exactly what to provide with my team to solve their problem.
What was that journey for you in doing that? So when you move more into a data approach, like what was the trigger for that with the current offer you have?
Super good question. The trigger for that was me working in a US-based company as an appointment setter. I realized super quickly that this company was capped under 6 figures, and I was the one that figured out what the main components, the main reasons were of why they stayed at that level, right? It was like $70,000, $80,000 a month. And they didn't have data. So sometimes they had 70K revenue months, and then it was 20, and back up to 50. Back up to maybe sometimes 100, and then back to 10. So there was so much inconsistency. And I realized if I figure out with my team back then, because I had a team working with me already, how to create consistency within this company, I can scale. And the only way I can create consistency is if I have the data to be able to prove, you know?
Dude, there was a Hormozy clip on this recently, which was, if you're trying to lose weight, if you do nothing else but weigh yourself every single day, you will inherently lose weight, because subconsciously you're going to think about losing it. You know you're not going to eat the donut. You know you're going to actually move more, sleep more. And looking at it from like a fitness perspective, which obviously you're into fitness as well, that same logic, once it's applied to your business, means that the results become consistent. They're just going to work, right? Because if you're in good shape and you eat well and you go to the gym, you're going to wake up tomorrow and probability says you're not going to be fat. So the same goes for your business. It's like people just don't have a hold of the numbers. If you do nothing else but just have the numbers tracked, they will get better without even making changes.
It's applicable to every single thing in life. And the most important thing I want to add to that is that most people have data, but they don't know how to read it to improve it, meaning they make the same mistakes again, right? And that's where most people fail, because 90% of the market doesn't have data. But the other, let's say 9%, does have data, but doesn't know how to read it to make improvements. And there's 1% that knows both, which are the people that scale super quick.
And I think for today, man, we can go the whole way through that kind of funnel like process, even from the very top down, because one observation I have made is that a lot of the data in the online business space is manual. So guys are either like hacking their way to getting numbers, or they just don't have any numbers at all. How are you approaching that?
When it comes down to creating numbers?
When it comes down to like tracking everything, right? Because if you're saying, when you're a DM setter, right? A lot of DM setting is quite manual, and guys are kind of like using spreadsheets and shit for absolutely everything. So when you were in that role initially, in that previous company, what was it you were doing initially to start that journey for people? Because some people now listen to this are at zero, right? They have no idea of like their numbers, making 10K, 20K a month, but again, they're guessing their way to it. Just want to take one quick break to ask you one question. Have you been enjoying these episodes? Because if you have, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel so that more people can see these episodes and be influenced to build an online business this year? Thank you.
I have a leverage letter, meaning I write down all the tasks that need to happen within the company. Every task. I write it down from 1 to 10 and I reorganize it in a way where I say, for example, let's say content, something I can't automate. I need to do content myself. You need to do content yourself. Meaning it's the hardest to delegate, right? I write down everything from 1 to 10 and then I ask myself the question, can I automate this or delegate it? Most of the things I can automate because tracking is the most important component, but you don't want to do it manually. And you rather also don't want to spend money in labor to be able to automate it. You want to do it completely automated with AI, right? So that's why we now at the stage where I'm at, we build custom AI systems that track, for example, like the ads we're going to talk about, tracks every single component of the ads step by step for me to know exactly where my money goes to, where my time goes to, you know? Where my labor's time goes to. That's the most valuable thing.
And I find this is interesting because even guys in my network who are making like multiple 6 figures a month, they still don't have a hold of their ads, especially like follower ads, indirect ads. They don't actually have a hold of what they're tracking and why they're tracking. So I think even if we just add that component to people, that's going to be so valuable for people to start with. So let's go at the very, very beginning, right? So your top of funnel is your ads. I think what you've got known for is your ads and your content. Let's go through the methodology there and why does that work so well for you?
The most important thing, and I wanted to touch on that. You said the people that make 300K per month that make that amount of money without data are people that rely solely on their personal brand, meaning there's not a lot of longevity into it, which is fine. But like there's no longevity into it into decades for them to create scale unless their personal brand keeps growing, then there could be.
It's not a business. It's
Correct.
not an actual business. It's
creator.
more like a showman.
Yeah.
They have to get up and dance for them to get results.
Which is exactly most of the time the reason why these people don't provide great services. Because they don't build an actual company, and they also, when they don't have the front end data, they don't have the back end data, which is the reason why they can't build a great solution most of the time, right? And I think that's super important to touch on.
Agreed. So let's go top down. So let's focus first on your organic content. So your organic and all your Miro boards is so fucking sick that everyone in the industry has started copying it right now.
I know. Which is a good thing, because if you don't have people copying you, then I don't assume you're doing something special. So yeah. I think that's important in the first place. Second, I feel like content is the foundation of everything. I think if you don't have content in place, and right now we're distributing content with stories, with reels, with ads, creatives, but also with YouTube, right? Podcasts. So content is the foundation of everything, because that's what creates conversion. So you can get top of the funnel ads. You can get eyeballs to see you every single day. But when the foundation in content isn't good, nothing will happen. So
how do you build a foundation?
Building a foundation with content is figuring out 3 things. So you have verbal content and visual content, right? Visual is what people see. So for example, when people see all my data points, instantly it makes them recognize, okay, this guy is data driven and this guy knows what he's talking about. Second thing, verbal, is I'm aligned with these 3 things, and that's charisma, conviction, and confidence. So every single piece of content that I bring to the market, I think about, is this conviction driven, confidence driven, or charisma driven? Right? That's the reason why I'm a super big fan of posting quality instead of volume based.
Because you only put out a reel every couple of days.
Exactly.
Even,
not even.
Not even, man.
No, I'm inconsistent in that sense. But
how did you think of those 3 buckets? So I want to go deeper in your mental model, right? It's like, where did you draw that out? Where did you learn this from, right?
It's interesting because I have never had a mentor. I've never invested. My main drive and experience comes from taking massive action and failing as much as possible. And I feel like that my skill lies into taking action without even thinking about if it's a great decision all the time. Obviously, you need to make rational decisions, but I tend to take decisions sometimes too quick, which is either why I fail too quick, right? Or learn too fast. It's one of the 2, right? Which is where that comes into place.
It's funny enough, that was actually the exact same as me. I couldn't afford any formal education, so anything in the online space. So I had to just chew glass enough to be able to get some data to be like, okay, this is working, this isn't working, this is improving, and so on and so forth, So let's go top of funnel. When you're looking at that content originally and you're creating that emotion in the content, why do you think it's hitting so well? Because you're putting so much detail into your Miro boards and everything. What is it that's really triggering with people, that's hitting the nail on the head with them?
You have the front end, which is like me speaking, right? Which is the reason why if people speak, this is what people always say, right? If you speak with conviction, although what you're talking about doesn't make sense, it still works.
Yes.
Which is a fact.
Yes,
which is a fact. But there is also a back-end component to it, which makes people transform from viewers to buyers. So I can talk about a lot of stuff, but whenever I talk about things that doesn't really make sense, people will like me, but they'll never convert into a buyer. Right? So the back-end component is the actual skill that people appreciate, for example, about me in business, right? Data-driven, solution-driven, problem-oriented, things like that. But the front end is the actual thing that gathers people's attention and converts them. So when we go back to the whole point, you have verbal content, you have visual content, which is, for example, my Miro boards. And I use it as trademarks as well, right? I invented Miro Reels, or at least maybe I didn't invent it, but I claimed it. Yeah. Meaning if other people start copying me, for example, you distribute certain content where people know, okay, there's always a guy at the top, right? And what I'm doing right now is I'm running retargeting ads on these types of people. So it funnels itself down to me, right? Where I have the main frame into creating that type of content, you know?
And eventually those guys that are copying you will actually come to work with you.
Either my clients or my potential clients.
Yeah, because they're mirroring, and there's nothing wrong with that. Especially if they're your clients, they're mirroring your actions because they admire you, right? And that's why the guide or the mentor needs to lead from the front, right? He actually does need to lead from the perspective of people can follow you and inherit in your beliefs, which is great. But it shows like that's why you need to be constantly staying ahead and evolving.
It's the point. Like, you know what it is with copying? There's no longevity into it because you're capped based on the other person's potential. You're dependent, right? And when you're always innovating constantly, you're the one that always stays on top.
And I think that's where you can create your own path for that, right? Which is like you're out of the trend. So what you're doing, the way that you've built your infrastructure, the way you've built your back end, that's just the way that you do things. It's kind of similar to how we build our business, right? We have a very lean team, but we have a big operation. Like we have multiple moving parts, but it's still very, very lean. Someone could look at that and think, I want that, but they wouldn't be able to copy it because it's kind of my background in hiring, culture, building teams, building systems. You are the USB. You know, you are that main edge that people want to buy in the end.
Correct. And it's you kind of copy everyone, right? Because you didn't figure out the wheel. Nobody did, right? But that's where you take inspiration from other people all the time because you extract information from so many different socials or content or, you know, thoughts network where technically every single time you're, you know, like depends where you draw the line of copying. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think that's super important to dissect.
Yeah. Would you say that all of your organic reels, they're with the goal of becoming ads?
No. There's a difference. I have problem solution driven ads and content, which means it like specifically explains a specific problem and I'll add the solution to it, which is technically value driven. We have credibility, which is purely with clients. So it's a transformational reel. And then that are the main two that we focus on that we distribute right now when it comes down to reels. And then with ads, it's also like transformational, education, or value-based. But it's a different type of scripting, a different type of hook and body. Right now, we're testing new ads, which is super interesting for everyone to listen to as well. Controversy works super well like 3 years ago, right? Saying something completely out of the blue, which catches people's attention, which increases retention. But right now, for example, in our VSL, we say 11K per month. And then people start to think like 11K per month. Everybody says 10K. Why does this guy say 11? Right?
Yeah.
And people are like, damn. Like, and then the moment they start to think about that for 3 seconds, they're already in the body. Because the whole point, the body of the ad, right? You have a hook and you have a body.
Yeah.
And I run both ads and the retention was going sky high with the ad where we said 11K because people start to think about the reason why I said 11. So when you can make people think in the hook, the body does the conversion, right? Because the whole point of the body is doing the conversion. And then you do a CDA at 65% of the reel and you do a CDA at 100%, so the end. and then you get qualified followers with the funnel that I run.
It's perspective shifting. You can shift people's perspective, get them to change their mind, get them to open up their eyes and everything. Do you find that some of the ads in the online business space now are becoming so repetitive, like that everyone is used to the fucking hero's journey, the story arc, and then the hard pitch? Because when you look at your ads, you look at your reels, they're very native. And what I mean by that is the way that we're running this now is we just have natural reels that they just look organic, they feel organic, they give a good vibe. So then someone's like, oh, okay, I want to follow this guy, or I want to engage with this guy, or I want to start a conversation with this guy, versus like, you are going to be poor, you're stuck at 5K a month, this is the way forward, come buy my program.
That are normally the super direct ads. You like VSL ads, I call them profile funnel ads, which is driven based on paying for eyeballs instead of paying for booked calls. And the most important thing that people don't understand, this is super direct driven, this is super indirect driven. Meaning sometimes it takes 2 weeks before people pay me 12K. Right? With the direct funnel, it's super emotional driven as well. Instead of like people making decisions from a rational standpoint, which is the reason normally why reputation, is a cause of the fact of onboarding a lot of people from a volume perspective based on emotional decisions instead of making a rational decision, onboarding quality people. And I think one of the most important things in info is the name behind it, right? You can sell people super direct on like a mechanism, which is what normally people do with like a VSL funnel, super direct, right? And the reason why people pay is because the offer sounds too good. But the longevity is created when people buy into a person.
Yeah. That was the first thing I said to you.
People pay me because they like me. And
Yeah.
if they don't pay me, fine, then they'll pay someone else that they like.
Clients are a reflection of you. Always.
Right?
They'll always be a reflection of you. I find like the whole VSL funnel. So with the new approach of like indirect ads, running them into your Instagram, I find the idea of a VSL funnel to be so outdated, because you're going to get leads that don't want to be on the calls. They're not going to show up. When they do show up, they're going to be super hostile. They don't know much about you at that point. And then you're really wrestling with them for a pay in full. Whereas it seems very inauthentic, and also you're going to get the wrong buyers. Whereas if you look at an indirect ad, an Instagram ad, a follower ad, people buy and they move through the journey when they're ready, right? So that's why I wanted to ask you about your duration before they start paying, because I would love to get your thoughts on what you think the lag is between a new follower comes into your world and when they pay, and what should be an acceptable metric for that.
It's a good question. With my funnel, it's even harder to track compared to a VSL funnel. Because with a VSL funnel, you can use ROAS, whatever, right?
Yes.
That's why right now, we're building custom-driven solutions to create, a way of tracking qualified followers and things like that. Tracking cost per qualified profile visit, which you can already see on the ad.
Yep.
But then again, if you utilize Facebook you utilize Advantage Plus instead of using like a manual campaign, Facebook decides where you spend your money towards, which is not a good thing because you want to have control yourself. We'll go into that later. So it's a manual campaign. I decide where my money goes. And we built custom solutions right now around being able to track exactly where each individual eyeball comes from, follower comes from, setter reaches out to the follower. Then we have a different automation that tracks show-up rate, that tracks closing rate, that tracks the amount of conversations we had every single day, the inbounds, the warm outbounds. You get my point?
How do you do that?
Building that automation?
But yeah, as in, how do you integrate that into Instagram? Because isn't there a lot of restrictions with running an API into Instagram? The reason I'm saying this is because I have that exact same issue. And, well, everyone does, obviously. And that was the whole point where I was saying it's very difficult to automate it all. Because the way that I think about this, and I would love to get your critique on this, is there's follower, there's new followers, there's ad spend per month, per day. So let's say $100 a day, there's 15 new followers, that's $2 or something. I can admit, $2 per follower. Then there's cost per qualified follower. So of that 50, let's say 30 are qualified, 60%, that's probably a bit high, but let's say 60%. And then of that cohort, when they book, what's the lag between there that we can contribute to cost per call?
So that's not the only metric, right? I think the most important metric besides cost per call is cost per qualified follower. That's the first.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
Right?
So CP, yeah, cost per qualified follower.
Yes.
Is the next subsection to the cost per follower.
Good question. So when you go to notifications, you click on notifications on your Instagram on your phone, and you go to follows. You see all the people that follow you. You have a name. Darren started following you from your ad. You've seen that before?
Yeah.
You can click on the side, and you instantly get redirected towards the ad that person came in from. That's unique. Now it's manual, purely manual. But in the business manager, you can go to the specific creatives that you've launched. So let's say there are 5 similar creatives. You still don't know which one it's coming from, right? Because you have 5 creatives. That one came in from one of them. You can click on the creative and you can go to Instagram posts with comments. So you go to that ad in the desktop. And then you basically have like 5 different creatives open because you launch and you run 5 different creatives, and you can see exactly which one it's coming from based on the engagement. So the amount of likes and the amount of comments. This is all manual. But now the moment we understand the foundation of the system,
Understand.
we can hire a programmer, a developer to build an automation around tracking everything manually. Right?
So then basically you filter creative based on most engaged and then scrape from there.
Yes, the AI does that. You can do that manually, but it takes a bit more time. So we do it manually now because there's nobody in this whole market that has figured out how to do it automatically.
But I think the issue is not because we can't do it. It's because Instagram don't allow it. Right?
Correct.
It's
Instagram API is terrible.
It's putting a square peg through a circle hole.
Yes.
You know?
I would say it comes down to knowing the right people.
That's what I mean. You know, it's like there's nothing natively, not native, but even indirect to connect to make sure that this is aligned. Like you can't necessarily just build upon this. And this is where Instagram and even DMs on Instagram can be quite muddy, right? Because it's very difficult to backtrace 1,000 conversations,
1,000%.
right? You know, which is why you need to have your CRM like super up to date and then that running in. But even at that, right? Like there's this, I'd love to get your thoughts on this from someone who was a setter too, is like tracking Instagram DMs and that flow is way harder than LinkedIn or emails or anything else because the conversations don't natively update into
100%.
close. I'm not using GHL, but into close anyway for the most part. So you do need like a sales assistant to measure that. Now you could correct me if I'm wrong here, but how have you solved that problem, right? Because this is the whole issue with scale, right? Is it works at, obviously everything works at 20K a month. It works at 100K a month, but does it work at 2 million a month, right?
Instagram is built as a social platform. It's not built to sell, right? So Instagram is technically just a social platform to share each other's experience, share photos and things like that. It's not built for business, whereas LinkedIn is, right? It's more for business. That's the first thing, right?
Instagram's for dating.
Right? Yeah, Instagram's for dating nowadays. That's crazy. So I feel like that there's always a solution to find when it comes down to creating scale. Now, let's say you're at 2 million per month and you run a volume-based company, a volume-based info product, meaning you get a lot of leads coming through the door and things like that. There are obviously things like ManyChat in which you can automate things with and whatever, right? But I think it's super important that the Instagram API constantly evolves and changes, which is why Instagram is one of the most complicated platforms to actually build something sustainable on. Besides that, when you figure out how to build an automation to constantly track each conversation and each inbound and each outbound, you get it all into like a how do you say that? Like a platform of data.
Data lake.
Yeah, like a memory card, or like a big memory card, which is what AI technically is. So it can gather all that data and it can make improvements based on that data. Now, I'm not a developer. I'm not a programmer, happily, because it's not where my skill lies. But again, I feel like the most important thing is that everybody knows when it comes down to labor, knows its tasks and its role within the company to know exactly what to do. So for example, right, like I have my company built on quality, meaning I don't have a lot of DMs every day. I don't have like hundreds of DMs per day. My business isn't optimized for volume, meaning I could have 3 inbounds per day and 20 conversations and make $30,000 in a day. Right? So I feel like it's going to be hard to get to a point where volume is going to overpass these types of automations in a way where you'll need these types of complex things, because the second thing, you got to ask yourself the question. Let's say you have a lot of volume coming through the door, right? You have to ask yourself the question, and you're making, let's say you have 500 DMs per day, every single day, inbound DMs, and you're making less than 500K per month. You got to ask yourself the question, does the problem lie in the conversion mechanism, or is the traffic the problem? Right? Because people get so much attention every single time, but they don't convert. They have 12 calls a day with 3 setters or closers. They have 2 different setters in their general and their primary. And they'll make less than 200K per month.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's like they have so much opportunity, they have no opportunity. Because they're missing the whole goal. And I think this is kind of an issue with setting in general, which is if you have 1 setter or 2 setters, their focus can't be on the 100 conversations a day because they're spread so thin. But if they have 23 a day, they can look at it objectively and say, okay, well, this person is a coach, they're making 10K a month. I know I can push them into this product. This makes sense in this way. It's more consultative.
Correct.
And it's funny because in our high ticket program, we have many guys that are doing like 130, 150K a month. One of the guys in particular has so much volume of leads, but the setters can't keep up with it.
No.
And it's funny because we just do sell by chat, which I'd love to chat to you about as well, versus a call funnel. And we just can't sit in the problem long enough with the prospect because there isn't enough time in the day. And then if you pipeline sell that too, it becomes harder. So it's kind of like ads, right? With ads, you find this break point whereby it's hitting, and then when you go above it on the spend, you could hit fucking the worst audience.
Correct.
You know, I think that a huge organic audience has the same tendencies to ads because there's people in there that are super cold that will never ever buy. So they're inevitably air.
It's a point of diminishing returns, right?
Yeah.
When you spend, like right now with the profile funnel, you can spend, I figured out a way to spend more now, but I could only spend 300 a day, meaning that's $10,000 a month. The return is 10x. So that's 100K, right? With specifically profile ads. Now I figured out a way to scale it horizontally and get it to 500 per day, right? While still making it worthily profitable in a way, you know what I mean? Yeah. But then when you start spending $700-800 a day, the problem comes into place where the return isn't worth the extra spend. You get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, so I was just at a mastermind and a lot of guys were in that exact same scenario.
Yes.
So they were doing 2 million a month, so 25 million a year, but then their margins are around 25%.
Gotcha, exactly. And there are also probably guys that spend a lot of money on ads, right? But technically the profit margin is lower. Like again, I think we made 216K last month, but like $170,000 is pure profit. Meaning there are people that run $1 million company, right? They make $1 million in revenue. But the profit margin is 20%, 25% at the end of the line, which is fine. It's just like, what is the type of company that you want to build? But also, where are your values at, you know?
And also, like, this is ironic because if your margins are 20% and you're making 20 million, that's 4 million in profit. But you'll also get the 4 million in profit if you make 7 million, right? It's going to be the same. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
And it's ironic because I started it and I still do have an agency. I now have 2. And agencies are historically very low margin. And I just never really believed that. It was like something you were told, right? And we just kept our margins really high. We sold really high ticket stuff. We sold year contracts, anywhere between 40K to 70K a year. And it's the things check out, right? It's still like 60% and it's doing like 2 million and then a year. And then on the coaching side, margins are like 70%.
Yes.
You know? But for me, I just don't understand it because we literally looked at numbers yesterday. My client acquisition costs are the lowest they've ever been. Had a really good month last month. But I think it's because I have a strong hold of the data. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Like, and I'm going to actually put this on my story today. I forgot to do it yesterday because I was so busy. Like what we're tracking internally. Okay, so let's have a take a step back. What would be like your CEO dashboard? What are the main things that you would track as a CEO across your company?
So I have different departments, right? You have front end, and then front end is divided in traffic and conversion.
Okay.
And back end is divided in team and fulfillment.
Yep.
So the most important thing is you have fulfillment trackers, You have team trackers that track all the KPIs and things like that. And then front end, same thing.
What would you track? Let's talk about the back end later, but maybe at a high level, what is it you would track?
Individually, let's say with team. So my team, every single person takes responsibility for their own tracking. So for the setter, it's like conversation started, it's inbounds, it's show up rate, it's conversations engaged and offers presented, it's booked calls, it's for the closer, it's showed up calls, things like that, right? Super generic, but I think people know. With team is like, this is a little bit more complicated because it's not only tracking if each individual team member is pursuing its actions every single day based on the KPIs they need to hit. But for example, like a closer messages people on WhatsApp every single time, tracks all that stuff manually. But at the same time with tracking, and this is interesting as well, I have an individual call with each team member every single week.
Nice.
I spend 5 hours a week on this.
Nice.
Nobody does this. The reason why is because I want to understand their the way they're into their emotional perspective on things. And I think this is the most important things. We can talk about hard data. But now again, I told you before this podcast, I have my whole team here in Dubai. So coming back to tracking things, I don't track their KPIs solely. I track their emotional state, which is the reason why people stay with me for years. And I think that is the most important component with teams specifically.
Yep.
Same with clients. The backend and your team is way harder to track than setting and closing because it's purely KPIs. That's why I fly out my team like 4 times a year to a specific place to work together. We do specific retreats. I have an individual call with each one of them every single week. It's like a therapy session.
It's amazing, dude, because you'll connect with them on a personal level at the professional goals will become achievable. The biggest thing
they trust me forever, and you share opinions. I talk about extreme personal stuff with them. The relationship that it builds is creating so much longevity forever, which is absolutely amazing. And I think most people don't underestimate the importance of having A players in your team. The only reason of why I'm at where I'm at today is because of the people within my company.
Same.
It's not because of me. So I could have not done this alone.
Yeah.
And I feel like that personal relationship is really what builds and creates that trust. Now I want to reflect that on clients as well.
Yes.
When you track clients' KPIs, so we have complete client dashboards and things like that, right? We track each individual client based on progress, action, things like that. Now, it same counts with clients. I do one-on-ones for a reason. People say it's not scalable. I disagree with that, right? But it's important. It's exactly the thing that matters into cross-selling, upselling people, getting them to stay with you for 2 to 3 years. Yeah. And that's where real wealth, is built internally in the team.
Dude, this is such an interesting conversation. So, and I love this, by the way, and I really appreciate you being so open with this as well, is because a lot of guys in this info space, they're selling chop shop, 10K a month offers. They're getting $1,500 from a client, and that's it. That's it. No one's buying anything afterwards. But the big shift is having longevity with the client, giving them more stuff, more value, being part of their growth engine so that they can pay and they want to pay more. Let me give an example. I have this young guy called Andrew, an amazing client, amazing guy. We met when he was 19 years old. He was making 4K a month with his agency. He wanted to come into our content agency, but he couldn't afford it. So I said, look, we'll start you out in an incubator, which is our kind of our beginner program. We helped him, did the one-to-ones with him. He scaled up to 24K a month. And then at that point, he kind of evolved. He'd finished, right? And he was kind of with guys that were getting started. We built a second program, which is allowing people to scale up with setters, mainly setters and multiple offers, for the most part. He now is in this part of building out a sales team. He's 20 years old. He's scaling up. And now, because we have a recruitment agency, we've given him all of the rest of his team. So his LTV has obviously hugely improved, but most importantly, his results have continuously improved. We're now super close. He moved to Bali from Wisconsin in America. We spend every fucking week together.
I love that, man.
It's part of the journey because your friends, if you, I always say this, that if you truly trust someone, you should work with them. My best friend is my CMO because we are just vibing together. We're in war together. Same with my clients, man. This is why I love client retreats and masterminds. We're all on the same mission and we're all doing the same thing. And I think that's That's what a company is.
And then I can ask you the question, like, how does it feel to help someone like Andrew?
It's amazing.
It's
right?
beautiful compared to selling.
Exactly. And doing it on your own, right? As a solopreneur, doing it on your own. Because I have this thing where, like, I feel like a lot of solopreneurs are not good with people.
I think being a solopreneur, good that you address this point. I think it's absolutely terrible. A solopreneur, you know how boring that is? Doesn't matter the amount of money you make. I don't want to make $500K per month in profit being a solopreneur. It's the worst thing because people are everything.
Yeah.
Your team, your clients, your friends, your family, everything. Right? So that's a super good point you're making. I can understand, especially for Andrew, that feels amazing, right? That feeling of knowing you're his mentor, you can help this person and you've helped elevate this person to a point where you're so happy with the outcome and the end result that it feels so extremely fulfilled. You know, not only externally where you sell a course and you make money from it, but internally as well. And I think that's something most people forget. And that's also where the longevity from clients comes into place. It's internally and not externally. And I think that's how you build, again, real business.
And it's the control part again, right? When you feel out of control because you know you're not getting results, because you're not able to get results. It's a big part as well, right? You're selling something you don't know what you're not able to get results on. And that's the reason why people feel out of control with themselves. I think it's a big reflection I've had working so closely with people and having like a podcast, meeting all these guys that are like at the top level, is there is a big element of they don't know what's going on in their life.
My conviction purely comes into the fact of knowing that I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I know what I'm fucking doing.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing with podcasts. You've done 200, 300,
300,
300, right? Yeah. So like we know what we talk about in our field that makes us valuable. And that's, again, to the first point where we started talking about in this podcast, that's where conviction and confidence comes into place. And with conviction and confidence, you can attract more people because that's what people are looking for. When people see, this is interesting, when people see that you believe in your product, they start to believe in it.
People love people who are obsessed.
Right? Exactly.
Always, man.
And
Always.
it'd go in every single detail.
Yeah, man. And then that's the energy they mirror, right? You're a very calm guy. Where does that come from?
I was around 3 to 4 years ago. I was always talking every single day, as much as I could, which made me realize that people never took me serious. So I had to learn my biggest lesson. And the moment you're talking for 90% of the time, right? And you're silent for 10% of the time, you're valuable the moment you're silent because people value what's scarce, right? When you're always talking, for example, you're always talking and you're silent for 10% of the times, people value that 10%. You get my point?
Yeah.
So I was always talking for 90%. So the moment I was silent, people were like, oh, Nick is silent, finally. Within my family, with my friends. And I had to learn to know when to speak. I want to go into that as well, communication and speaking. I think that's one of the most valuable skills every single individual can learn. So I learned how to be quiet and to know when to strategically use my conviction and my confidence and in moments to be more calm.
Why?
Because the moment you strategically choose how to talk with conviction or not, and when to talk, you position yourself in such a way where you always almost create benefit for yourself. And that makes you a lot more valuable than people think. And I think that's a better skill that I've ever learned compared to any single business activity.
Such a good point, man. And you're way more observant.
You're way more observant. And that are the people that are highly respected deeply internally. The moment you're on a table with, like 9 different people and 8 are always talking. The moment this is interesting. I said this in one of my short form content clips. Let's say you're at a table with 10 people and you start to interrupt people. People make the decision to either tell you, like, what are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? Stop talking. They'll either hate you or they highly respect you. While even though you're talking, people are like, I respect this guy. This guy is talking even though I was talking, but they'll still respect him. You get my point?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what's really, really, really valuable. And that's also where influence is created. The moment you have influence, you can make everything happen in life, like everything, because you can control how people make decisions. And the moment you can control how people make decisions, you can make people pay you, right? In a good way.
Yeah.
Like influence is super good the moment you utilize it in the right way. Not everybody's doing that.
100%. And like they're like influence spans. Have you read Robert Cialdini Influence?
I've never read a book in my life.
Really?
Never.
How come you've never had many external influences?
I don't have the patience to read a book. Yeah, I'm super active. I cannot sit still in a chair. So this is super rare. No, now we're having an amazing conversation, but no, I don't have the patience to read a book, which is something I would love to learn. Like I still have to learn how to read a book technically, and I always was figuring out like, fuck, I want to learn how to read a book. And at a certain point I was like, wait, maybe I take and extract my information from different things, and that's 100%. Fine.
And from action.
I love to meditate. That's where I get my peace from, and I was always looking, because everybody told me, Nick, you need to learn how to read books. I was figuring it out, but it didn't work. And I think it's fine to accept the fact that I don't like reading books, but I do meditate, and that's where I reflect, journal, and where my creative mind starts working, so to say.
So how do you do that? Because of course you're very action oriented, so you'll have a preference towards mind active, body active.
Yes.
So how did you switch to mind active, body still?
I think that's actually a super interesting question. Mind active comes from obviously the vision you have and the goals you want to achieve. But I think most people, and this is also the reason why most people in our market are confused. Right? They don't know their actual vision and their goal. They're just not clear on it. And I think that really prevents you from pushing every single day. No matter the money I make right now and the things that I have, the assets that I have, I'll still keep pushing every single fucking day because I want to become the best. And I know I will. Right? That's the confidence I have. But at the same time, when it comes down to a body perspective, I feel like as a super interesting example, right? When I don't go to gym for a week, it starts to reflect on my mind easily, right?
Sure.
And I really recognize that based on knowing that I need to move and do shit every single day. Whether I go for a drive with my car where I get a lot of dopamine and adrenaline, right? Or whether I need to do that every day.
Yeah, man.
To just relieve my energy, release my energy in a way where I will be able to sit behind my chair and think for 8, 12, sometimes 16-hour days. Yeah.
I'm laughing, man, because my fitness coach, he's always telling me you need to take rest days. You need to take a break. You need to take a break. But if I'm really busy with work, I'll always go to the gym because that would just be my only time where I'm not working, actually at my desk. So that's my relax is training. And the only day I didn't was in Istanbul last Saturday. I obviously take rest days, but where I didn't have any recovery modality like ice bath, sauna, swim, or whatever. And on Saturday, I walked 11 kilometers around Istanbul because I have to be body active, mind active.
Yes.
And then I was just kind of writing some notes on my phone, and then I was sending a few voice notes to friends, or to team members, should I say, who are also friends. And that's where my release comes from. So then I got back at 9 a.m. because I went out at 7 a.m. and I had walked 20,000 steps. And I was like, oh, that was great. I had great release.
Yes.
So people's release comes in different mechanisms. It doesn't have to be reading a book, right?
No, correct.
And, it can be anything. And to be honest, dude, it can actually be watching TV if that's your release. If you're working 16 hours a day and you want to fucking chill out and watch a small bit of TV to reset because that's the modality.
Yeah.
You have to see where it fits into your journey.
I would disagree with the TV. The reason why is because it's a distraction. So it's not an actual pure focus of focusing on yourself. It's like a distraction. You know what I mean? Where you technically rest, but internally not. Because you're putting something on pause.
Good point.
Instead of continuing something. And this is a good point because people always feel I need to meditate, journal, do super quiet and chill things. But again, gymming, it's high dopamine. Yeah. As entrepreneurs, we're always moving. So we tend to look for things that always give us super high dopamine. Gym is the perfect example of this. It's the first step where you can let go of your energy, and fuel yourself while doing something that creates high dopamine with a lot of activity. I think that's kind of like a hack. It's a glitch.
Similar with food. I also found food very interesting too, because obviously like the food you eat is going to obviously fuel your brain, but you can kind of hack food from a perspective as an entrepreneur too, in terms of what is it I need for the business and what does I need for my body. That's the reason why I have a coach. Is my background's in bodybuilding. He is a bodybuilding coach, but all my food is engineered towards the business. Everything I do is engineered towards the business.
That's super interesting.
That's the focus, right? So whether it is my villa at home, the way it's structured, going to the gym, the way I come back from the gym, everything is engineered for the business. Because I like naturally wasn't a smart person, so I have to create that environment to be smart in that moment.
You feel like there's going to be a point in life where that's going to switch around?
No.
Where things are going to be engineered around your life or family or things like that? And then
I'm already married. So this is
I have a lot of respect for that, man.
Yeah, this is the argument people like have of me, which is like guys are like, oh, like he's always working. But I'm actually not always doing things. I'm in the environment of it, right? So like Elise will travel with me everywhere I go. We work at home and everything. Elise also works in the company now as well. So everything is engineered around that. Does that make sense? And we enjoy it, right? So just like you do, I enjoy it. So even the dinners we have with our teams, they're still for the business. Does that make sense? So you just create a life that you don't want to escape from, effectively.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, especially like the age we have, it's super valuable because again, like we have energy. Yeah. So it's supposed to be like that and you're building your future.
Yep, exactly, you know. So let's take a bit of a detour into, so we've went through the organic side, went through the ad side. Let's go through your stories. So your stories is super unique. And I think the way that you've manufactured and created different archetypes of your stories is really unique. And one thing that I've really noticed is the fact that a lot of guys do story formats to get people to buy their shit, but they're kind of ineffective, right? Because I think people are getting kind of known to it as well. Maybe that's my level of awareness because we're in the space. How do you think about your stories and how do you think about the strategy behind it?
We recently run story ads and it's been going exceptionally well.
Interesting.
It's one of the best numbers I've ever created in business, based on every single thing that I've ever tried. The reason why is because supply and demand, not everybody's using it. No one is using it. Story ads. Technically, stories in general, not a lot of people are using it for actual powerful conversion. Now, stories are super slow. So nobody wants and can commit to start to it and do it consistently every single day because it takes 3 months to see your first couple results from it. Meaning people, as we know, always want to see a direct return. When they don't see a direct return, they'll think it doesn't work and they'll stop. Now, again, longevity comes into place where I look at this metric. Every single time a person sees my story, it adds 1% to the potential buying power. So when they watch 100 stories, sequences for, let's say 100 days, they're at a point of conversion where they're ready to pay. And I feel like that stories are powerful because it reflects on a personal situation in that moment, which is exactly the reason why that separates itself from YouTube videos where you talk about a specific topic, or reels where you talk about a specific like asset or, you know, like a micro bore, a data-driven solution. Now, stories is always different. Sometimes I drive my car. Sometimes I create curiosity in stories. Sometimes I do a CTA. Sometimes, and it's super personal driven. So I don't prepare my stories at all for like 2 weeks straight. It's the only touch point where I don't have leverage.
What do you mean?
I have leverage in my reels. I know how to create them. I have people that help me with it. I have a team that backs it up. Okay. Same with YouTube. It's all systematized. Same with client fulfillment for the big part. And then obviously team and like setter and closers, all automated. With stories, this isn't the case. And the reason why is because I feel like that I create the best stories the moment I want to, like based on the situation that I'm in at that day, at that situation. So I take an hour of my day to make these stories. But again, no leverage, so it takes up all my time, but it's worth the conversion. It's worth the longevity of it. When you post stories every single day and a new eyeball comes in from the story ads, So there's the ads that I create with follow me to learn more or follow to interact. People start to follow me. They start to see my stories every single day. And because I'm consistent, because I almost don't miss a day, there's going to be a point of conversion where they're going to be like, I have to pay this guy.
How do you create your ads for stories? Like, is it one slide? Like what's the mental framework you're going through?
One campaign, 5 different ad sets, retargeting IG, the engagers of the last 180 days. That's the retargeting campaign. Broad cold, focus on Denmark, US, for me specifically, Germany and Spain.
Spain?
Yes. I have the most amount of clients out of these 4 countries, and United Kingdom as well.
That's interesting.
Broad cold. So you exclude the audience of the retargeting. It's just broad cold. People that don't have a clue about who you are. And then you utilize targetings like entrepreneurship, lead generation, content marketing, social media marketing, high-level achievers. I'm giving so much sauce away. Like, this is super valuable when people implement it. So that are great interests to target. So you have 5 different ad sets, 1 campaign, ABO campaign, so manually spend. And then I have 150 creatives. Anywhere between 25 to 150 creatives with such small different angles, prior stories, edit with text, edit with a CTA. I can see exactly which one is working individually well. I create a new campaign, I duplicate it, and then I purely solely run it with the best ad set and the best creative.
Do you do your own ads yourself?
Yes, I do my ads myself.
Yeah.
Yes. The only people that I give the actual sauce to how I run ads is my clients.
Yeah.
And myself, because it's too powerful. When you know how to run ads correctly, and people would disagree with me with this because they're always a big fan of organic, I would agree, but you cannot rely on organic.
I have a lot of insight on that, dude, because my background's in organic.
I'd love to talk about that.
Right, so my background's in organic, and a lot of my friends are organic. I would call them like organic princesses, because when you have an organic background, the enemy is ads. It's bullshit, right? But the enemy is ads. And you start believing these things in the online space that are just like not true. They're just all these things in the space. Like ads are bad, calls are bad. Like they just don't know why they believe these things. Whereas I believe if you come from organic, you're going to be 10 times better at ads because you know how to show up, you know, 100%. Camera work and everything. So when I went into ads last year, that's when I started last year. So 4 years into my journey, I went into ads. It was just so easy. It was like, here's the copy. I'm like, all right, that sounds like kind of like a real whatever, that's fine. And then recorded this way, I already have a studio in my house at home. I built the studio from scratch. Awesome, fantastic, great. The only issue that the organic guys have is how to run the ads. I'm just going to ask you. I've had a ton of issues with my ad accounts. A ton of issues, bro. Like a ton of issues. New accounts, just ton of issues in new accounts and shit. The usual stuff. But I guess like that's the non-media buyer in me that struggles with. But what I'm trying to say is that it's possible. Same with the paid guys. The paid guys, like William Brown's a good friend of mine. William's last business was all based on paid. And then he went into organic and was like, what the fuck? This is great. And then he kind of thought, oh, maybe I don't need paid. And now he's kind of the same settling that I'm on is like, both. Do both. Do it all.
I just wanted to tell you that. Why would you choose? Why would you hate on organic or hate on ads? Both is necessary. You'll create the highest return on ads when your organic problem is solved, right? You need both.
True, man.
So it's so stupid that people tend to choose for one thing or hate on the other thing. It could be a good marketing angle to say, oh, don't do organic because whatever, right?
Yes.
You need both. Everybody needs both. And your ads give you the data on knowing how you could make organic more optimal. And your organic stimulates the conversion in ads because people see credibility assets. They see a testimonial. People see my Miro videos with data-driven solutions or specific value. People see my car. They're like, damn, this guy has a Porsche. Interesting. Yep. You know, it creates the conversion.
100%.
So ads are excellent to create massive conversion. And it goes hand in hand with organic. And that's the reason why people always tend to choose for one specific thing, but it never works. They both need each other.
And I think the mental framework here is if you come from an organic perspective, just think about it's almost as if you're putting out reels every single day, but you don't need to do it. You know, like I was speaking to Jeremy Pogue, you know, Jeremy, blonde guy.
Yes.
Awesome guy. Such a nice guy. Such an awesome guy. His follower ads, he said he was running them at one point for 3 months straight. Like he just ran them for 3 months straight. He was
Yeah.
busy, and he said it was still working, still bringing in leads, he was still closing them. The same ad. So I think it's hilarious. And actually, I was at a mastermind and I met Richard Wu, very big guy on Instagram, and they're doing like $1 million a month. And I was like, oh, like, what's the strategy? Like, what are you doing? And he was like, I just run one ad, how I gave up porn, found Fade, and now I help people build digital products. And I was like, that's it? And he was like, honestly, dude, like, that's it. So it's simple but not easy.
Yes.
And you can very much, which I did at the time, I kind of scared myself out of it. Because I was like, oh my God, there's so much work to get involved. But I mean, go 0 to 1 and then take the next step up.
The complexity isn't within the ad, the creative. I can help people build a custom scripting that goes extremely well and gives a 10x ROAS. But is the 10x ROAS actually coming from that creative, as you said, right? It comes from so many more external things within the whole funnel that matter. And that's what people don't understand. That's why, for example, a specific ad scripting is a super good mechanism to utilize within your front-end marketing. Say, oh, I help you build your ad scripts, automate it from an agency perspective, as an example, right? But it's not the thing that solves the problem. People always think that certain things solve the problem, but normally the problem lies somewhere else and the solution lies somewhere else than what people actually think what the problem is. That's why people always like say like you sell what people want and you give them the solution that they need. And
So
that's the way to
consultative
become
selling
rich.
it's a consultative selling, right? Finding out exactly what it is they actually need
Yes,
and having a suite of products, you know?
correct. And the more niched you look for the problem, the better the solution will affect. It will be the solution will be so much more effective for the problem that you solve, and you can charge way more money. You have a way better client, because this is super interesting. I have so many clients that make like $300,000 to $400,000 per month, and the main reason in the back end of why they have such good reputations is not, these are normally people that sell courses, right? I'm specifically talking about volume-based companies that sell courses. It has nothing to do with the results that they get for their clients. Nothing. They're literally 80 to 90% doesn't get results within these specific companies, but the expectations are set right within the front end.
Can you explain?
Yes. So expectation setting is one of the most important things. When you set the right expectations, you don't do crazy guarantees. You don't overpromise people stuff. You're upfront about the actual solution that you're selling, and you explain it in the most clear way. People take responsibility for their own actions instead of putting the responsibility on you. Meaning, if they take responsibility for their own actions and they go through something and they've gotten the exact thing that they've expected, and with courses, we all know people don't take action. Whenever they don't take action, they take the responsibility for themselves. So they would never blame it on the service provider. Now, are results important? Obviously. Do you need to have a streamlined process to create the best client results? Yes. But we're specifically talking about a specific service provider that normally, doesn't really care about their product, cares more about their marketing, provides courses on volume, Yeah. And wants to get people these results. The point I'm trying to make is that expectations is more important than outcome. It's the most important thing. And make sure you don't put the responsibility on yourself. Because if you put the responsibility on yourself, you have 100 clients you can't fulfill. People are going to be mad. People are going to be mad at you. People want refunds. People do disputes. I'm not sure how long it has been since I've never. I don't know when I've had a dispute, ever.
I've never had a dispute. I had someone go to the bank about their card because it was a huge company we were selling to. This was in the B2B side. And this massive company, and a random finance manager was like, I don't know who this company is. And they went to their bank, and then they had a huge issue with my Stripe account. And then we literally sent them an email, and they said, whoops, that was a mistake by me. And he goes back to the bank. And that's the irony, was that I didn't even know what a dispute was, because I was just so used to just people just paying, and then that was the end of it. That was my only ever instance, and the guy literally responded going, that was a massive mistake. Because our company is called it's a different name than what you see on the front end. And it was just funny because in the info space, this dispute shit happens every day, right?
For a lot of people, it does. It happens a lot, and that's why the industry has, so it has given such a vibe where people think it's like, whether it's a scam or whether it's this or that, right?
Yeah.
Although I do agree with the fact that most people provide shit.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of people in the space that are so good at providing a solution that actually creates scale, or that actually creates improvement, or that actually creates something valuable into the return on the money that they've spent. And I think that's something that need to be changed.
What's the main dream outcome you have in your offer?
So my whole marketing runs on my solution, right?
Yeah.
I don't have guarantees. When people work with me, I'll tell them, you lose your money, right? If you can never get your money back. Super simple. I set the expectation so clear that there are no guarantees and things like that. And I don't need to, because my credibility, I have the best client results in the whole market. So people see that the solution does the conversion. My marketing does the conversion. It's like a cycle, right? I have good marketing. I provide client results. These client results and all that credibility, I put back into the marketing, which feeds me with more clients. So it's an endless cycle, because people know that what I do works.
Yeah.
People know that what you do works, which is the reason why the solution is the main component within the marketing that drives that result. And I think that's like incredibly important. Based on outcomes, I don't want to say anything. You can just look at the testimonials and the client results, and then you'll know.
Because you have different clients, right? It's similar to us. Like you guys in the beginning of your journey, you guys further on. It's just interesting, right? Because most people are known for like what their dream outcome is.
Yes.
But yours is more like this is interesting, right? Because a large angle that we do is like your YouTube, because it's basically really, really top of funnel stuff that we're helping people with. And then I'll actually give you an insight. So give you a bit of a backstory. So we're helping people build and grow YouTube channels and podcasts. And that was great. And we blew the shit out of the channels, and just, it's not that difficult, right? So we're doing that for quite some time. And a lot of our clients were like, this is great, but we can't monetize it. But because over the years I had to figure out offers, I was like, well, yeah, it's simple. You just have an offer on the back, and then what we're talking about on the front end, we connect to the back end. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. So we had to add that component in. And this is still undone for you before it was done with you as well. So we were now helping them with the content and then helping them with their offer. But then the guys couldn't close a door, let alone a 6K paid in full. So then I was like, well, it's simple. You have to run your calls like this. And they were like, oh, I don't know how to run my calls. So I'm going to teach them sales, right? So then it became this huge thing, which is like, yes, you need content, give people what they want, so that you can give them what they need, which is, we need to teach you sales and how to build an offer. So that became the 80%, which is ironic.
Yes.
So people still come in to build like an ecosystem of YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, but it's actually offers and sales we help them with, and they kind of see that afterwards.
Exactly, because your whole job as a service provider is to figure out exactly what your client's problem is and help them solve that. And they can think, they always think it's something else. That's the reason why they need your help. They need your help because they think the problem lies somewhere else. So they're technically not aware, meaning you need to help them become aware. And the purpose of being a good consultant or a good coach is helping them become aware about their problem and providing them the resources, support, implementation, information, whatever you do, to help them solve their problem. And I think that's one of the most valuable things. To go back to the point of saying you can help different types of people, the difference between this is my solution is personalized. So it's personalized based on each individual client because we do one-on-one. So it doesn't matter if people start at 10K when they get to me or 100K. We don't help beginners. So people that haven't figured out the business models, like that makes sense. I don't want to help them. They normally don't have the capital and they don't have the awareness they need for us to implement all the systems we have, the implementation, information, accountability, communication. But the moment you sell a course, most of the time, the reason why people say the course is bad, it's technically not always about the course, because there are really good courses out there. It's because the service provider decides to take anybody in. Well, if you take 100% in, only 10% fits the exact problem, meaning only 10% of the people get results because the course is useful for them. You get my point?
Yes, sir.
90% buys it, but doesn't need the exact solution the course is providing. And because the course is systematized, it's a framework, it's one evergreen asset, it's going to be super hard to solve each individual's client's problem. And that's why I like personalization so much.
Well, this is so interesting, right? Because that is what consultative selling is. Because take a step back. So like our methodology is like offers, content, sales. The order is important because from creating so much content, I believe that you shouldn't create content until you know what the offer is. Because I've seen so much just massive content creators just not be able to sell anything, right? So it's so much easier. But a lot of people might come into my world or come into your world and say, look, I don't need help with my YouTube, even though they probably do, but I actually need help with my offer. But their offer could be great. They just might need help with their sales process.
Correct.
So then we would look at it and be like, look, we'll help you with that, no doubt. But this is the thing you need. And it's like, yes, we have all the other bells and whistles, but this is the thing you need. If you solve this bottleneck, this constraint, under the theory of constraints, all the other shit doesn't matter. And it's getting people to that point, and I think that's where you sell to business owners. When you're speaking to business owners, it's like, we agree that these components are in place. This is the one we need to solve. And I feel like that's how sales can become easy. And it's so easy. It's actually easy to train reps based on that too, right? Because it's like, look, dude, you just got to find out where their issue is and just solve that one.
It's so extremely easy. It's same with clients when we walk from the front end, what you just said, towards the back end. Mm-hmm. It's like, look at what each individual client needs. You know, also from an emotional perspective, like, what do they need? Some clients ask 10 questions and some clients ask 1 question a week. Like try to adjust yourself towards knowing what they need. That's how you make a relationship successful. You can talk about that more. That's how you make a friendship successful. Being able to adjust based on who's in front of you. And that's also where speaking comes into place. Knowing when to speak and how to speak in what situation. Right now I'm in a podcast. You know, like tonight I'm dining with my friends. Tomorrow morning I'm on a client call. Like when you can adjust yourself in so many different situations and you can make yourself adaptable while maintaining leadership or like certain standard with clients, for example, right? You become so good at fulfillment. You become excellent at solving people's problems. And that's where you're called an expert. An expert get paid well.
What's your opinion on sell by chat versus calls?
I love selling by chat. The reason why I love it is because people are paying a massive amount of money with massive trust. And that creates so much longevity because they have seen your content. They trust you. They technically don't know you, but they still have the balls to pay you $12,000 in the DMs without knowing you. And I respect these people a lot. Always my best clients. Always. So I respect people that are able to make decisions and take risks. And people always say, yeah, I take risks, but that is an actual risk. And I want them to take that risk because if they take that risk, I know they will be a great client. There has never been someone that DM closed that hasn't been a great client. And I'm at a point right now with my clients where I absolutely love each individual client I have. I work with amazing clients. It's excellent. And it fuels me. Whereas when I run the agency back in the day, 1.5 years ago, it was a done-for-you solution. I worked 70 hours a week. I had 25 virtual assistants working, managing, providing a solution that was hard to provide. And I worked with companies, but I didn't work with great people. You understand the difference?
So one of my mentors said to me, if you provide a service to other people, you'll always be a servant of them in many ways. So if you imagine like a Roman Empire, if the writer at the Roman Empire is writing down the words of the emperor and he makes one mistake, he loses his head, gets the head chopped off because he's always a servant to that person. Whereas in consulting and coaching, you liberate other people. You give them the tools. And as a result, they feel empowered. I think it's a beautiful example of why service delivery can be looked down on a lot of times.
I would completely agree.
And it's unfortunate, right? Because the people that provide services for people, they do so much and they are so talented and that's why they're so good at coaching. But they have low self-esteem because they get battered over their head with their clients all the time.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. The type of client you attract reflects on everything. It even it reflects on your whole fulfillment, on the type of client results you get, on your marketing, on the better clients you attract, the better your marketing you have to attract better clients. Yeah. It's a cycle. It feeds into everything. And that's super, super valuable.
Because it has a drag, right? Negative clients has like a drag on the business overall. And that's why it'll never scale. That's why you'll never do well. That's why you'll never kind of cap out. So what's your sell by chat process? And then when would you say you need a call?
The moment the chat isn't the sauce. The chat is just payment link, pay, done. It actually happens in the conversion. So for example, within my stories, within my reels, and with my YouTube videos, I'm super upfront to people. And nowadays in this market, we're in a situation where people respect other people that are super upfront and straightforward.
Good point.
The moment you're super upfront and straightforward, I literally say in my stories sometimes, I'm not looking for more clients right now. Pay me next week. And people are waiting. Trust me, people are waiting. So next week when I do a CDA, I say, like, okay, ready, offers 12K, you can pay me. People are in the DMs ready to pay. Meaning, it's not always driven on a CTA specifically, where I say, okay, DM me the word info if you want to scale your own consulting company. It comes down to a perspective of like kind of like indirect marketing, where I constantly push value-based marketing in a way where, for example, if somebody DM closes, I make a screenshot, say here, another guy closed in the DMs. It incentivizes more people to pay in the DMs. The more you talk about something, the more people you attract that want that exact same thing, because they're going to think, fuck, this guy paid in the DMs. I don't want to look like a loser. I don't want to hop on a call with Nick's team, spend an hour asking questions, and then potentially pay. Like, I don't want to be like that. And that's also how I segment a specific group of audience, right?
Such a good point, man. That's such a good point. That's an amazing point, dude. Because like you have to do what you want your clients to do, which is like buying a portion full. So the PIF is portion full.
I said I bought my portion in full, and the reason why I did this is really because of the reason that I want to respect my clients. Now, obviously, this is an incredible marketing asset, and I use this marketing asset as well. But the fact that I can say that I bought it in full is one of the most valuable marketing assets that I have, and one of the most valuable sentences that I can say on podcast, on person, with friends, or whatever, right? With clients, for people to see that I practice what I preach, because every single thing that I teach is what I do myself. And it works because you can see where I'm at, where my clients are at. My clients have public names. Everybody knows my clients. Everybody knows my numbers. I share my numbers. People see my YouTube videos. They see my, I want to say Stripe dashboard, but I don't utilize Stripe anymore, which is good. So
what do you use?
Stripe is terrible. You see what can you use? You can use like it's promotion, but it doesn't matter. You can use WAP. You can use fan bases. You can use things like that. But I really like to use bank transfer.
True.
It's you know.
Especially if you're not doing like reoccurring. You know, it's just less complexity. You know.
For sure.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like with the type of clients I attract right now, bank transfer is super easy. Same with crypto, it's super easy. But yeah, when you sell an offer for 5 times a day, payment processor, just the link, a Stripe link or any specific link that you can use is going to be so much easier.
Do you have a recurring element to your business?
Yes. After 6 months, people upsell. So we have a 6-month process where we help clients one-on-one. We got them, we scale them. And yeah, our retention rate is incredible. So we upsell a lot of clients in the back end for a yearly offer.
Okay. So they move more into like another mastermind effectively.
Correct. And the beauty is the problems are more complex, but at the same time more simple, right? They're harder but simple. And meaning the most valuable things that I teach clients that are clients for 2 years require the least amount of time, make the most amount of progress. There are clients that hop on a call with me for 15 minutes every month while I'm in my car driving, while I go to dinner, quickly, WhatsApp call, done. And next month they'll send me a message, yo, Nick, I scaled from 210K to 370K in 1 month because of that one call. And that's where real value comes into place, right?
To put your finger.
Value isn't measured by time. It really doesn't matter how much time you spend on something. As long as you know exactly what that person needs for them to scale their company, they'll blow up.
That's super interesting, man. My mentor says to me, the more you pay me, the less I give you. He just knows where to put the finger. What's your how is Instagram versus YouTube warming up for you? Because YouTube is, you're back to posting consistently again. Like how much clients, what percentage do you think comes from YouTube right now?
Instagram stories, I think right now, like around 60 to 70% comes from ads, top of the funnel, obviously.
Really?
Yes, but a lot of conversion happens on Instagram and on YouTube, and then 30% organic as well. We have a super high referral percentage as well. So like people know me, they say, okay, Nick's setting, have you seen his stuff? Here you go, done. And clients referring other clients where they get a 10% commission. That's also an income stream for sure. But again, we don't want to be dependent on that.
Yes.
The ads is something that's predictable and consistent, meaning we can decide how much money we make and the direction we want to take it in, right? When it comes down to YouTube and Instagram, Instagram is for nurturing, YouTube is for conversion. Every single person sees my YouTube videos.
Interesting.
Every single person.
So
Without my YouTube, the conversion will be complicated. Although my Instagram is, again, super niche specific, meaning it does a lot of the conversion work already, but YouTube is definitely the platform where people are like, yeah, this guy is, he really knows what he's talking about.
But sorry, they buy on Instagram, but they complete their own decision making through YouTube.
It's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that's the best thing.
Yeah.
And the reason why I make the money I make is because people cannot get rid of me until they pay.
Yeah.
They cannot get rid of me. So whether it's they hear something from a friend, or they click on this link, they'll go to that link. They'll click on this link. It's a whole ecosystem. And that's the reason why I said organic and ads, you combine them together. Instead of doing one separate thing, you'll combine them together and do both, right? Basically, the funnel that I've created is perfect because each component stimulates each other, which creates massive scale. They'll see my organic, they go through my ads, they can just not get rid of me until they pay. Do I mind if they're going to take 6 months for that or 2 months? No, I don't mind, right? I just want to make sure they pay at a certain point, whenever they're ready.
Yes. Where do you think your weak spots lie? Like what's something you're working on?
It's a good question. Do I have weak spots? Absolutely. In business, I think I sometimes feel like, and this is super interesting, but the things that you're most busy with are always also things instantly you think you do wrong, right? I feel like I haven't even got enough data on improving the things that I want to improve on, which I see it as a negative improvement, as a weak point. So from a perspective of people, they think I have a lot of data, and I do. I have massive amounts of data, but I do feel like I can get so much more. And this also reflects on the standpoints of always willing more, right? Because like I feel like the biggest problems are internally, because that's what reflects on your business all the time. So I feel like the biggest thing that I can improve on is reflecting and knowing the situation that I'm in, knowing what I have, will kind of learn me to how do I formulate this the right way? I think sometimes I get into the struggle of feeling I don't have enough, which constantly pushes me to get more of something, but that's infinite. You get where I'm coming from?
It's a double-edged sword.
Correct. And there is never an end at infinite. So it's never enough, technically, right? And not having enough is good because you constantly push yourself to get more. That's a super good quality. That's a super good skill. But you also need to understand the point of, like I feel like that I struggle a lot also within my personal life with, I always keep working more. And right now in my situation, I could see myself work 12-hour days for the upcoming 50 years. Based on my situation right now. Because technically your mindset goes into okay, the more you work, the more you make, which is completely right.
Yeah.
And I also disagree with the standpoint of saying the more you work doesn't mean the more money you make. I technically think that's not always true. You just need to make sure you do different work.
And the right work.
And the right work.
Yeah.
So you can work 12-hour days. You'll make more money constantly. You just got to make sure you do the right work in things.
And there's a lag too, right? I don't give a shit. I'm happy to share. We had a really good day yesterday, and then this morning I woke up. We had done 2,700 before I woke up. And then I was like, right, well, it's only 7. We could probably do like 12K today. Like we can. Now before, back in the day, I would make 12K in a month, right? And it's like, now I have the infrastructure, the team in place, like 5 calls in the calendar. Okay, we'll close like 1 or 2. Fantastic. You that lag didn't happen overnight, man. Right? It didn't happen overnight. It happened over a long period of time. Getting one thing right, the next thing right, the next thing right, and then you are lucky. And I think that's an important point, right? Is for you, you're creating so much infrastructure that lag of success is just going to continuously increase. And then I guess it comes down to the point of, the way I always frame it is like, I have everything I already need. I'm married, I have a business, have my house, have my dog, I have everything I need. I'm playing for like bonus points, and as a result, it's like fun. Great team, great culture. There's problems, but it's great though. We enjoy it. So I wouldn't see a scenario whereby I'm not doing this.
That's interesting.
Right? I wouldn't see a scenario where I'm not doing this, because insert what I'm doing with fucking B2B SaaS, and it's the same shit. Good team, good problem we're solving. It's fun. It's enjoyable. New challenges.
That's such a good point. And that's where I struggle with at moments where I'm like, okay, I'm looking for the infinite, meaning I never have enough. And maybe I'm not always happy with the things that I like. I'm not always feeling how grateful I am for the things that I do, and being at a point of abundance, where I feel like, okay, I already have so much. I don't enjoy that specific moment.
Do you struggle with money? Spending money?
Yes.
I do too.
Yeah.
It's been a inflection point, because I grew up very poor.
I know where to spend my money towards to create returns. So I'm super good in spending money on business in this way. But at the same time, that's a good point. I have a hard time spending money, sometimes even in business. But I've learned certain things with A players and team and ads. The biggest mistake I made in business is the moment I had a 12x ROAS a year ago, not spending 10x the amount. That's the biggest mistake I made. The moment something works, you need to put all your power and all your capital and resources into it to make it as best as possible.
I feel like the entrepreneur adjusts to spending in the business, because like for us, like we do spend a lot in the business. Like I'm open to spending more, hiring more. Yeah, we need more editors. Cool. Fine. Because it's not for me, it's for the business. And that's bullshit, right? That's a bullshit mindset, because it's like for X. It's like my wife, right? If she needs something, we might go to the doctor. I'm like, yeah, cool. Just, it might be like, doctor's expensive, right? Private doctor's expensive. Got to pay for it. But then what I'm saying, in the personal life, on your own, do you spend the money on yourself? Do you value yourself to take care of yourself? Right? Does that make sense?
It does. I don't do that enough.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It's like a respect and value thing.
Again, exactly. And also going back to that infinite point, you never have enough, that feeling. You're constantly striving for something more that isn't there technically. You get my point? And that reflects also on not taking the time for myself on Sundays, for example. I always work.
Same.
I work for 80 hours a week. I don't do anything else. And obviously in my content, it looks like I'm doing something different, which is fair. Right? Because I do go on a client retreat and I have fun for sure. But I work so much and I'm going to grow even faster when I do decide to take Sundays off to reflect, to do fun stuff with great people and to create space in my mind to think. You know what I mean? Because that's super important as well. And I learned how to delegate things within my company to create that space from a business perspective. But if I do learn, for example, how to take Sundays off and not work at all, I think I grow a lot faster. Does that mean it's not difficult? It's insanely difficult. Yeah. We both know.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's super important,
It's
and that's definitely one of my weak points.
Though. Like, if you have an element of rumination in your mind where you ruminate a lot on things, that made you successful, because it made you not watch the football game and instead do things. But again, it's a double-edged sword. It's like the people that make 10 million a month do less. They're not fucking taking 100 client calls every 2 minutes, because they know like where the energy flows and where the frequency is and where to put their finger on to get that 10x
highest leverage activity, what they need to do to make their company move to the next level. Yeah, that's why it's also like super difficult to say, okay, when do you stop, what we said, right? When do you stop working less? It depends on your point of satisfaction. Like, are you excited and happy with $1 million a year company, $10 million a year, $100 million a year, or do you want $1 billion company? Right? It depends where your values are at, the outcomes you want to create for yourself, the people that you have around you. But technically, you can always keep building, working. And it's also, what do you give priority? Money isn't everything in life, which I had to learn.
Yeah.
There are things that are way more important. Money is just a tool that we utilize to create freedom, or to create scale in companies, or to, things like that. So that's super interesting.
Is there anything super long term you want to achieve or build?
I was at the Atlantis yesterday with Isaiah, my ops manager, and we were talking together, and he said, like, the only thing that we care about is becoming as big as possible, because I know I'll be the biggest. Like, I really fully have the confidence in every single aspect that I will be the biggest in 5 years. But the most important value comes into place, that I want brotherhood. I want to build things with great people, and I want to build a family. That's such a good feeling. Isaiah works with me for 2 years. He is so extremely loyal to the company. He is so extremely good at what he does. He is on my level. And I know he will stay with me for years. So the most valuable thing comes into place, because technically I have money, I have everything I need to live my life on my terms. But it's technically building that family in my company, and then building real family.
Yeah,
that's everything, man. Like, imagine my company can take care of so many different families. It can create brotherhood. It can build a family within the company. That's everything I need. That's everything I ever want.
Dude, it's so interesting. One of my employees, Magno, he joined us when he was in school in Brazil. So he was finishing high school at 17. And then he like missed a team meeting like a month ago. And I was like, it's chill. And he was like, I'm out buying my first investment property. He's 19 now.
Wow.
Fucking awesome,
Incredible.
dude. And I think that creates the culture. We do company retreats as well in Bali. They're going to come for our masterminds. Another guy in like Vietnam, life like change. And I think that's the biggest impact you can have, is through your content too. Even the free people who don't buy anything, is this starts the journey. Well, if Nick can do it, I can do it. Correct. And I think, I know that you've only been kind of, well, getting known in the past like year, but in 5 years' time, because this is what happened to me. In 5 years' time, you'll be speaking at events, and some guy will be like, 5 years ago, I watched that reel. Exactly. I watched that podcast.
Yeah, I think people underestimate how difficult it actually is, thinking from a longevity perspective. People always say, yeah, I understand. But if you really do, you take different actions. And I think it's super important that you think in decades and not in months.
Yep.
Where do you want to be in a month? Yeah, it's not important compared to you want to be in like 10 years from now. And when you start to think that way, you start to reflect it on yourself into taking different types of actions.
Yeah.
That's why the most important thing for every single hire you make people see the vision. A players want to see a vision, and they want to have the trust in you that you can be the leader in accomplishing that specific mission or vision, right? That outcome. When they see that, payroll is not important.
I said the exact same thing, which is...
When they know you will become the biggest one.
Yeah. The payment is unnecessary.
It's nothing. It doesn't matter, because they know that you will be the leader that takes care of their family in the future. They know that they will be working with the biggest company. They will literally be part of the biggest company ever. And that's the most important thing. And I don't treat my company at all as my company. It's not my company. It's our company. And that is one of the most important skills that you learn as being a leader. It's like, you help them build something instead of being their boss. And I think a lot of people struggle with leadership. I think it's one of the most important qualities besides communication. I do definitely think communication is number one. But second, in leadership, if you build a company, you want to grow it past $1 million a year, leadership becomes the second most important component, because your people drive your team, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Without your people, who are you really?
Yeah, such a good point. Such a good point, because you'll be at that cap, and I think it's the true statement as always. Like your own personal development, your own business development is always capped by your personal development. So if you're someone that people don't want to follow, well then your business is not going to grow. it's not going to take off. I want to ask you about like even your personal relationships. Like, are you in a relationship now? Do you have like a romantic partner? How does that fit into the ecosystem?
I don't have a relationship at the moment. I'm really focused on what I do right now. And I feel like my time is spent perfectly in the way I do things now. My goal is to marry at 25.
Awesome.
That's why I have a friend. His name is Quinton. He's married. He's 22. That's why I have so much respect for what you both do. My goal is to marry in 5 years. I feel like people always say, okay, you marry when you're 30. I disagree with that because the most valuable thing in life is family, always. And I think everybody internally knows. Maybe not externally, but internally knows. So the faster that opportunity presents itself, the faster you have to take it. Now, are you going to force these things? Absolutely not. When you force it, it's not going to work.
Agreed.
And you have more experience, so you can tell me all about it. But that's my goal. And when my energy is open to it, I know I'll make it happen.
And dude, the focus you have when you're married is hilarious because you think before you're driven, but when you are now responsible for multiple people, you become super, super focused, dude. Because I remember the day that we got married, the next day I just like went vroom, like the pressure just goes up and then you either rise to the pressure or you fall. And for me, it was just like step up. And it's hilarious. If you track when we got married, which was in October of last year, the business has just gone like this since.
Wow.
Because there always is a second component, right?
Yes.
And like I've always taken care of Elise, but I mean, I did it in a kind of a kind gesture way. She doesn't need me to help her, but she doesn't work. And that was a voluntary thing that we decided was that she would stay at home and then I would work. But a lot of it was in good faith. But then when you're married, it's like you as the caregiver or care provider need to step up to that mark.
Yes.
And things like small things like this, man, like, you know, Elise has had like a few surgeries and operations and she's had issues with her stomach, and we have like a private healthcare in Thailand, in Bangkok, which is very good for healthcare, oddly enough. That stuff isn't cheap. And me knowing what that path may look like, it's like I do need to get my shit in order.
Yes.
With health, wealth, relationships. And I think it makes you a better person and leader. And I actually gave up alcohol 3.5 years ago, and that was a huge proponent too in my just ability to step up, right?
Respect. I feel like a lot of guys always say like, girls are distractions. I never say that, and I'll tell you exactly why. The guys that say that haven't figured out who they are to attract the right girl. So
Agreed.
It always reflects on yourself. Girls aren't a distraction to your business. Some girls are. But you are who you are, and you attract a specific girl. Meaning if you say that and you attract the wrong girls and you think that, you're not the right guy.
Your reality becomes, what you say becomes your reality.
Exactly. And it comes back to short term and long term. When you have a wife, you will stay with her until you die. Right?
Such a good
Meaning
point,
if
dude.
there is longevity, it doesn't matter because you know you solve problems. And marriage is one of the most difficult decisions you make in life and one of the most important decisions you make in life. So when you do make that decision.
That's why I asked you, because you're super young, super successful, like good looking dude, well put together. So a lot of guys your age will say, oh, I want to make the bag before I find the woman. And my argument has always been the antithesis of that, which is you find the partner just whenever. And then that person is with you on that journey. You know, I met Elise when I was in loads of debt and just coming out of university. Like I was in uni and had like student debt and shit. And the money hasn't changed us, right? We have some nice things, but it hasn't changed us, our relationship. And are you familiar with Sahil Bloom? By any chance? Sahil Bloom's a really cool guy. He has an amazing book called 5 Pillars of Wealth. Young guy, he's early 30s. He was in investment banking in America, private equity, and making a lot of money in his early 20s, and then left it all, went into building his own business, and has gone through this cycle too. And again, married to his wife very early. They were like mid-20s. College sweethearts, all the usual stuff. And I've talked to him at length about this in podcasts, and we both settled on the same thing, which is it's not about making the money first or anything. It's about finding that right partner for you. And then when you find that right partner for you, no matter if you're sleeping on the street or in a penthouse in Dubai, it becomes irrelevant.
Exactly. I would agree with that so much. That's such an interesting take, and that's beautiful again, because you will go through everything and you'll do everything to protect that woman for the rest of your life, and she'll do everything in her power, right, to support you in any way. And I think that's the best feeling that you can ever have.
Yep.
Having a partner and trusting that person in any single way.
It's
knowing
also
you
care.
can.
You
Yeah,
know? It works
of
both
course.
ways, you know, because like the man provides and then the woman takes care, right?
Correct.
So like if something goes wrong in the business, I'll often say to Lise, I might just be like, oh, what's your thoughts on this? Like, what do you prefer, this or this? What sounds better? And then I just having that sounding board, I think it's a massive, massive leak that like online business bros are not thinking about.
Online business bros.
Yeah, no, they're just not thinking
Such
about
an
it, man.
interesting take. No, they're not, and they see it. They have tunnel vision. They see it in one specific way, which are normally the guys that don't have experience. You know, which is completely okay. But they're such in a tunnel vision where they see only one thing. You know, and I think it's beautiful when you have a wife, you can communicate with her about your business problems, in specific ways. That's super interesting and super, super valuable. You know, and I think obviously for men and women it's different, but even having somebody that just listens, you know, I think I became that person for my mother. My mom has struggles sometimes, and just knowing, because she's a single mom, so knowing that she is somebody that she can just talk to, that's enough, right? I'm just there to listen her and hear her out, what she has to say. She doesn't need a response. I don't need to solve her problems. She just wants someone to talk to, and I think that's enough for most people. Because the biggest problem is people always tend to solve other people's problems.
It's a good point.
Another point to go into, I don't have to go in depth, but when I was younger, I have been, like, my parents' government money spent a lot of money on me to go to therapists. It's like a different conversation, but the one that helped me was the one that helped me solve my problems.
Yes.
I solved the problem myself, and all the other 13 tried to solve the problem for me, which is why it didn't work, because nobody can solve your problems ever. That's in coaching, in consulting, in therapy, in relationships, in friendships. Nobody can solve your problems. It's impossible. People can only help you solve your problems.
And they can help you see, right? They ask you the right questions. So
Exactly.
coaching is.
Which is helping.
Coaching is asking the right question.
Correct.
Why do you believe something? Why do you feel like that? How do you want to feel? And I think it's funny because whenever anything happens with my wife, if she's upset or whatever, I'll often ask, like, okay, do you want me to be supportive, or do you want me to be like logical? So logical is like, we should do X. Supportive is, how do you feel? And she's like, oh, just support. And it's masculine, feminine, male, female. But it's the same with your employees, the same with your team. Like, I have guys and women on my team, vastly different. My COO, Piyush, she was in Goldman Sachs. So me and him are just like to the book. I'm like, bro, fix this. Let's do that. Let's go here. Move forward. Many other people on my team, I have to ask, like, how do you feel about this? What would you do differently in this position? And they will come to the same solution. And that's what EQ is. That's what emotional intelligence is. It's
Exactly.
understanding who you're speaking to.
Yes.
Back to the prospect too, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's understanding and being adaptable.
Yeah.
Based on who you have in front of you and the situation that you're in. Knowing how to act, knowing how to help people, and know how to create a win-win, a benefit for both. You know what I mean?
Such a good point, man. Well, dude, I want to say a huge thank you. This was such an amazing conversation. You need to do more podcasts. And I've no doubt, man, it's just going to keep going up from here. And I want to support you as much as I possibly can, man. And I feel like we have many more of these on the way.
You're a great person, brother. I really want to appreciate you for inviting me. And I think people had a lot of value from this talk together.
Dude, I feel like every 18 months we'll do this conversation and we'll just see this huge gap between where you've just been continuously, you know?
Promise.
Big thank you, brother.
Of course.
You're a legend, Ron.